Okay, this video is on the grep command, and it's to give you some general information about the use of the grep command and some examples for its use. So one thing that's kind of a sidetrack is a lot of things in Unix are a play on names, or they are inside joke, or there are situations where people knew what name they wanted the command to be and they made up something that it stood for. One of my favorite examples is one of the first email programs on Unix was called Elm, E-L-M, for electronic mail, but it also is a type of tree. Well, it was very popularly used, and the University of Washington used to, anytime a new version of Elm came out, they would make changes to it to make it more attractive and more usable for their users. Down the road, a new version of Elm would come out. They would have to go make those changes again. So at some point, they decided they were going to take the version of Elm, maintain it themselves, and kind of do their own thing. And they needed a name for it. So they named it Pine, another type of tree. But the command name Pine stands for Pine is no longer Elm. So a play on words. Now, grep is kind of different. The command line editor for Unix was VI. And in VI, you would do what people ended up referring to as grep. So I guess let me back up a little bit. Grep is a command that searches for strings, possibly using regular expressions. And then talked about the play on names, and that grep is the later one. So very often in the Unix editor, VI, you would need to search for a string, and you would use this command. The colon means I want to issue a command line editor. The G stands for global, and then in slashes, RE stands for regular expression, and then the P means print everything that matches. So people were doing this all the time to search for things in their documents or programs. And people started calling it the grep command because, as you can see, grep is right there on the screen. So they decided it'd be nice to have that from the command line. So Ken Thompson, supposedly in less than 24 hours in 1972, came up with the grep command. Now, Ken Thompson is an important person because he's the co-creator of Unix. He was the co-developer of the C programming language, and he was the principal designer for Plan 9 from AT&T. Again, the Plan 9 is kind of a play on words, if you will, because there's evidently a cult movie called Plan 9 from Outer Space. And so what AT&T did is, they said Unix was created in 1969. We didn't really have file servers. We didn't have email. We didn't have messaging. So if we were to design Unix today, keeping some of the core concepts, like, quote, everything is a file, but we know about all these other services that have just been bolted onto Unix over the years. How would we write Unix today? And that was Plan 9 from AT&T. But anyway, they knew they wanted the name to be grep because that's what everybody referred to the process as. So Ken Thompson declared that grep stood for Global Regular Expression Print. Some people will say Global Regular Expression Parser. But regardless, that's a name that was made up to match the function and what people already called the process. So the full syntax of the grep command is this. So there's a lot of options. There's over 20 individual flags, and then there are arguments that take values. So that could be a lot of things to learn about. But the most common usage is simply this. I want to grep for a pattern in one or more files. So the file ... means you have to have at least one file name, but you can have multiple file names. So that's just the standard Unix syntax. So some general examples are this. I want to search for the string ABC in a file named file1. Anything that matches the line will be printed out. Similar example, I want to search for the string ABC, but I want to do it in 3 different files, file1, file2, and file3. Up to this point, the strings have just been there, but there's some situations, for example, if you want to search for something that contains a space, so that it knows it's not a space between file names or between arguments, you will need to put that in quotes. So this example searches for a space followed by ABC followed by another space, and it's going to search file1. Now, maybe a little more related to cyber forensics is this. I want to search the file whose name is timeline.csv, and I want to look for lines that start with, that's the caret, 03/05/2026. So anything that is from March 5th, I want to see. Another example is maybe this. I want to look for 404 errors in my HTTPD log, which in the case of the machine I'm on, and very often the case, is Apache. So that'll show me all the files not found. So, sometimes people make typos, but other times somebody might be trying to do directory enumeration, and you might be able to find that. Now, some other options or options we might use is the -v. -v means show me lines that do not match. So for example, if I were to give this command, I would be saying show me lines that do not contain space 200 space. So presumably what I'm looking for here is any line in the Apache access log that was not a successful HTTP request and response. Sometimes when I'm trying to look for something that might be unusual, I will use the -c option. The -c option shows a count of lines that match, or when used with the -v option, count of the lines that do not match. So an example of that would be count how many successful requests there were in my web server access log. And then you might turn around and say, okay, show me how many page not found errors are in my access log. Another option that you use quite a bit is the -i, which means ignore case. So an example of that would be this. I want to look in some log, and I want to look for the word login, but I don't care what the case is. So if it's all capital login, it'll find it. If it's all lowercase login, it'll find it. If it's capital L, lowercase OGIN, it will find that as well. So there are many times that you might want to ignore the case. So that was a super quick introduction to the grep command, along with a handful of options that you might want to use.